I can't believe we're here so soon after we just got finished talking about all the Duelist of Gloom Egyptian God card support, but yes, we are here and the Winged Dragon of Ra got a new support card. This is what we're going to talk about in today's video. It's from Collection Pack 2020, but we're also going to talk about some other support that was revealed over the past couple of weeks here for other decks that I'm really interested in. Basically, I was doing some bigger projects and then the ban list dropped, and I've been making all sorts of videos, so I haven't been able to keep up with all the OCG reveals. We got Phantom Knight support, we got Raidraptor support, we got FA support, believe it or not. So we're going to talk about all of that as well as this Egyptian God card support in today's video. This is not in the same category of support as all the other cards that we've recently looked at for the Winged Dragon of Ra. This one is not coming out of Duelist of Gloom, it is coming out of Collection Pack 2020, so at this moment I have no idea when we're getting this in the TCG. Dark Spell Regeneration is a normal trap card that says, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, target one spell in your opponent's graveyard, set it to your field. Then it also has an additional effect here. While in the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard and send one monster born from either your hand or face down field to the graveyard. Special summon one Ra from your graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions, but send it to the graveyard during the end phase. Then you can send one monster your opponent controls to the graveyard. The intent of this card is obviously to steal an opponent's monster born and then use that face down monster born to trigger the graveyard ability of this thing, but it doesn't have to work that way. And I think in a lot of cases it actually won't work that way, because not only is monster born already not that popular in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, but also you have a ton of access to monster born in a Winged Dragon of Ra deck because they just got a piece of support that actually searches monster born. So in that way, I wouldn't necessarily think of Dark Spell Regeneration as a card that will always steal your opponent's monster born and then immediately send it to the graveyard. Realistically, you're trying to steal just a really powerful spell card that your opponent might have, and then use your own monster born that you searched to use the graveyard effect and bring back the Winged Dragon of Ra. It is a pretty interesting card. There certainly are some very powerful spells that you could steal. Things like Called by the Grave and any draw spell like Pot of Extravagance or Pot of Desires would all be great choices for Dark Spell Regeneration. This card is obviously meant to be paired with the Sun Deity, a trap card that can significantly boost the attack and defense of a special summoned Winged Dragon of Ra, but I'm just not sure if it's fast enough to actually see competitive use or really any use in an Egyptian God card deck. Prior to this reveal, almost all the other support for the Winged Dragon of Ra has been very clearly meant to go into an OTK based strategy, you know, summon a big Winged Dragon of Ra, make it unaffected by cards, and attack your opponent for a lot of damage, and this card just doesn't really seem to do that, or at least it doesn't do that as well as the other cards revealed. That's not to say it's completely unusable, but it just seems a little bit too slow, and it doesn't even have that much to do with that it's a trap card. It more has to do with the activation requirement for the first effect. Just in general, trap cards are obviously slower than all the other card types in Yu-Gi-Oh, but especially one like this that requires your opponent to attack first before using the effect. Yeah, that's just not going to cut it even in a rogue strategy. The Winged Dragon of Ra decks are all really aggressive, and setting a trap card and waiting around for your opponent just isn't something that they want to be doing. Even in the unlikely best case scenario where you actually manage to steal an opponent's monster born with this card's effect, I still don't think it's that impactful in a Ra deck. That being said, where this card is really interesting to me is that it might imply we get even more the Winged Dragon of Ra support out of Collector's Pack 2020. For whatever reason, 2020 seems to be the year for the Winged Dragon of Ra. We got all that support announced for the Duelist of Gloom set in the OCG, and now we have another new card out of a completely different set. Yeah, it looks like Konami really wants the Winged Dragon of Ra to be played in some capacity. This one card obviously isn't that good, but because it might imply that in Collector's Pack 2020 we get more God card support, well, that's pretty unique and could make the Winged Dragon of Ra an actually competently viable rogue strategy. Right now it's not quite there, but if they throw enough cards at the Winged Dragon of Ra and enough of them are actually competitively viable, well, maybe eventually you'll get a competent deck. Like I said though, this video is not only about the Egyptian God card support because that was only one card, but also right around when the ban list dropped, we got a bunch of Phantom Rage cards revealed, which is 2 core sets ahead of us right now, and these cards were really exciting, and a lot of people have been asking me to review them, so I will in today's video. The first set of cards that I want to talk about is the new UA/FA support support. Now, I'm personally not a big fan of the UA monsters. I don't want to pretend that I know what a lot of them do. I obviously have some experience playing against them, both on the TCG and Duel Links, but I am a huge fan of the FA cards, and this first card that we're going to look at is really, really exciting. UA Hyper Stadium is a field spell card that says this card is always treated as an FA card, which we've seen now multiple times in the Phantom Rage set, because as you'll see in a moment, the Phantom Knight cards are often treated as the Raidraptor cards, which is pretty interesting. Anyway, UA Hyper Stadium says when this card is activated, you can add to your hand one UA or FA monster from your deck or one UA Stadium from your graveyard. Already we're off to a great start. Many of the FA field spells float into other cards when they're destroyed, but this one searches on activation and will be a very welcome addition to any FA strategy. You can reveal one field spell in your hand and pay 1000 life points. This turn you can normal summon one UA or FA monster in addition to your normal summon / set. Even if this card leaves the field, you can only gain this effect once per turn. You can only activate one UA Hyper Stadium per turn. This card is amazing. I don't think alone it'll be enough to make FAs or UAs a competitively viable strategy. The UA support revealed in this set that we're not really going to talk about, but that support looks really good as well. But in the context of the FA deck, which I actually have played, this thing is insanely powerful. The FA deck oftentimes would have bricky hands where you didn't have the right pieces of cards, so the fact that this can search any FA monster on activation is just insanely powerful for that strategy. The extra normal summon / set is also very good as well. The deck sometimes lacked extenders, and especially without Ancient Fairy Dragon, it was sometimes difficult to actually put a lot of monsters on the field if your opponent had interruptions. UA Hyper Stadium will absolutely be a staple 3 of in every single FA and probably UA deck. It is one of the most powerful hybrid support cards that I've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, of course, it's supporting FAs and UAs, which historically have not been that good of strategies in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! So even though this card is very, very powerful, I don't think Konami is too afraid of either deck warping the format. The next card that I want to look at is UA Locker Room, yet another hybrid spell card. This one is actually a quick play spell card, and there were 2 UA monsters revealed that had nothing to do with FAs, but all these spells and traps, I believe, worked for both archetypes. So this one says this card is always treated as an FA card, which is great. Target one UA or FA monster you control or in your graveyard, return it to the hand, and if you do, gain 500 life points. Then you can reveal any number of UA and or FA monsters in your hand and shuffle them into the deck, then draw the same number of cards. You can only activate one UA Locker Room per turn. I like this card. You know, it's not broken. It is sort of a magical mallet effect that adds a card from your graveyard or your field back to your hand. I think in most cases you will use it as a recycling effect for cards in your graveyard, and that's fantastic. And the shuffling effect is really good as well. The one complaint that I do have about this card in the context of an FA strategy in particular is that it can only shuffle back monster cards, which is definitely a huge downside, because a lot of times in the FA deck, the monster cards aren't the cards that are bricking you. It's drawing too many field spells with no way to destroy them. That being said, it is still a very good card and a card that you would likely play in any FA or UA strategy. There's also like a sort of lackluster trap card and a couple monster cards that are only for UAs, not FAs. So for now, I want to change the focus to the Phantom Knight support, starting out with Raider's Wing. So like I said, this support, or at least a couple of the cards, are also hybrid cards. So this one is not only a Raidraptor, but also a Phantom Knights monster. So this thing says this card is always treated as a The Phantom Knights and Raidraptor card. It is a level 4 Winged Beast Dark monster with 0 attack and 2000 offense, and it says if this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can detach one material from a Dark Xyz monster you control, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect of Raider's Wing once per turn. An Xyz monster whose original attribute is dark and has this card as material gains this effect. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. This thing seems like a pretty cool extender, as well as a card that you can special summon from a graveyard for more longevity. I like it a lot. I think it fits more in a Raidraptor deck than it does an actual Phantom Knights deck, and I don't really think there's a combination of those two strategies that will work, but I do think this card actually could be included in a Phantom Knight deck if you want to play a more level 4 focused build. The one that I'm really excited for, though, is a level 3 monster. It is a warrior and it is a dark, and this one is only a Phantom Knights card, not a Raidraptor one. It has 600 attack and 1600 defense. You can discard one card to send one Phantom Knights card from your deck to the graveyard except itself. While already it's insane, if if another Phantom Knights card or cards is banished from your graveyard, while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. It is a hard once per turn for both of them. This thing is insanely powerful. Sending Phantom Knights from your deck to the graveyard is already fantastic. There's so much you can do with this effect. I mean, there's so many different Phantom Knights that have powerful graveyard effects that either search cards or send cards or special summon cards or whatever. And what really makes this card super powerful is the fact that it doesn't actually have to discard a Phantom Knights card, it just has to discard anything. That last effect is a little bit scary, right? Because this card has no restrictions. So you theoretically could discard any random card in your hand, doesn't have to be a Phantom Knights or anything along those lines, and then you could send Cloak to the graveyard, add Boots to your hand by banishing the Cloak, and then special summon the Boots for free. At that point, you can make any number of powerful Link 2 monsters, stuff like Cherubini because they're both level 3 monsters, or even something like Isolde because they're both warrior monsters, which is really, really strong. We saw Rusty Bardiche get banned because it was being abused in so many different strategies that weren't even really Phantom Knight decks, and this card kind of scares me for the same reason. It seems too generically abusable, and I'm a little bit worried about how strong it might actually be in other decks besides Phantom Knights. That being said, it is still a very good Phantom Knights support card, and you probably would play it as a 3 of in any Phantom Knights strategy. There are more Raidraptor / Phantom Knight support cards that were revealed, sort of like how there were more UA cards that I didn't talk about in today's video. Basically, I just want to spend some time talking about what I feel were the biggest reveals from the last couple of weeks for the decks that I enjoy playing the most. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today's discussion video. Goodbye.